Barbara Hudson is a great storyteller, and this is the best book of stories so far. It's called Do You Remember the Barn Owl? Out in paperback now with fantastic books, out in October as an ebook. It contains 28 extremely short and extremely entertaining stories, subversive stories, iconoclastic stories, stories which will make you uneasy in an exciting way. I've got Barbara here, who is going to talk about why she wrote these stories, and indeed, first of all, I hope, why she writes at all. Why go to all the bother of sitting down for hours on end, as I know you have to, in order to produce stories like this?
Because I think I'm a natural storyteller. I used to be a social worker, and I loved other people's stories. And then I started thinking, why don't I write some? I don't only have to listen to them from other people. So that was part of it. Originally, as an academic, I wrote an awful lot of academic stuff, but when I retired, I took up short stories, and I sort of became obsessed, actually, and wrote dozens of them. And I've still got more than are in that book, actually. But then more recently, they have dried up, and I'm working on my third novel now. And I do actually prefer reading novels, but I like writing short stories.
I think there's an increasing market for short stories, isn't there? Which might be a consequence of the fact that we have diminishing attention spans. We like sound bites. Attention has been destroyed by devotion to our phones.
Yes.
Do you see these very short stories as playing specifically into that space?
They probably do. Stories, I did a creative writing course with a wonderful tutor, and one of the things that he said was, a story is as long as it has to be. And some of them are only worth a couple of pages, some are worth 5 pages, and some are worth a novel-length piece of work.
Well, it's always said that the most difficult thing to write is a very short book. And I think by the same token,
Yes.
The most difficult story to write is a very short story.
Yes.
And so the fact that these are extremely short, some of them,
Yes.
but also work, is a great triumph.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that. Yes, I've enjoyed it so much, and I just hope I can produce some more. But time is running out.
I hope so too. Oh, don't be silly. So I describe these stories as subversive, but you don't seem like a subversive person on the outside. Is that how you think of yourself, as a rebel, an iconoclast, as a disturber of things?
I certainly was when I was an undergraduate at Cambridge. I was in trouble quite often. I think I'm a more respectable citizen now, particularly having been a social worker. Social workers are extremely respectable, and I hope I'm not subversive, but I do have a slightly evil sense of humour, sometimes quite nasty.
The comparison which struck me was with Roald Dahl.
Yes, and I do enjoy those. I do enjoy his stories, and I loved them on television as well.
Yes. Do you set out to shock specifically?
No, I don't think so. These stories just came out. They weren't really. I didn't set out to do anything with them. They just arrived, and I wrote them down. You know, I think with novels, I think a lot more, and I think longer, and I do struggle a bit more with what I'm trying to say. But I think these came out sort of naturally.
Well, I'm surprised that you say that there's no real agenda underlying these, because the underlying agenda, which I thought was here, was to displace people's naive presumptions about the way that people behave.
I suppose there's a bit of that, and there's a bit of things like the barn owl, which is one of my own favourites. In that,
mine too.
That comes from something that I think most of us have, and that is, in me, a feeling of regret for not doing things I should have done at the time, standing up for causes that I believed in. That sins of omission, if you like, is at the bottom of that. And the next layer of message, because it has sort of two really, the other one is about the environment and how much we should care for it and what beautiful things there are to see, like barn owls.
So are you partly writing to pay off debts which you think that you owe? To do stuff through your stories which you think you should have done earlier in other ways?
I don't know. You know, a lot of these thoughts come after the story's written. I think with the barn owl, I wrote it and I thought, gosh, yes, I do feel guilty about things I haven't done. Not the barn owl story itself, though I knew some barn owls quite well, actually, in my childhood. But little things that I should have done that I haven't done. I remember seeing a child tormenting a dog and walking by. Little things like that. There are a lot of things that we could do differently or should do differently, I think, and be a bit braver about. And but I didn't set out to write about that. It just came in the story somehow.
In a lot of these stories, to my eye, there's a mixture of acidic and kind. Do you think that describes you?
I think so, yes. I try not to be acidic in real life, but I do have fun being horrid in some of the stories.
You fail in real life. I can assure everyone in being horrid.
Yes, I think that's true. And some of these things just strike me as so funny. Like you know, there's a story called The Easter Hamster, and that was based on a newspaper account in the Oxford Times. Somebody did bury their hamster, and it did come back to life.
Oh, you mustn't give away the punchlines.
No,
That's not good.
I won't.
That's not good for business.
Well, that isn't what the story tells you.
I know.
but that's where it came from.
Yeah. Just to tantalise your readers with some other titles, The Woman Who Slept with a Monkey.
Oh yes,
The Pimple. I think The Pimple's my favourite.
That was my first story ever, and I was doing a creative writing course and went home all full of enthusiasm. It was run, this is the first such thing I ever did. It was David Armand, who's a children's writer, in fact, and he was so encouraging, and I thought, I must do something this weekend. And I was doing internet dating at the time myself, and I thought how awful it would be if you woke up and found you had a pimple. And that's what that story's about.
So what do you think creative writing courses have given you? How different would you be as a writer now if you hadn't done those?
Well,
if you just ploughed your own furrow?
I don't think I'd ever have written a novel. I did a University of East Anglia course with, and the reason I did that course was because the tutor was Adam Folds, who is one of my favourite novelists ever. Yes. And I thought, to be able to sort of learn from Adam Folds. And this was run by the University of East Anglia at its London campus. So I commuted down to London to do it. And we had to produce a lot of words every week, and they were shared among the other students. And the other students were extremely successful. Some of them were successful writers already, in fact. And so it was quite high-powered. And people told me some things I didn't want to hear, like not being so autobiographical, and sort of telling me to sort of get a bit braver and don't be so soppy, and there were a number of things like that. And I also learned some of the tricks of the novel trade, like having motifs coming that you can't actually do in short stories so easily as you can in novels. To have and looking at themes, though in fact I on the whole, the theme seems to emerge from the writing rather than me thinking I will write a story about conservation or I will write a story about guilt. It didn't work like that. I thought I'll write a story about a girl who watches a barn owl, and it sort of came out, and the ideas, and as I was going along I took an interest in Chris Packham and things that happened to him, and gradually it sort of built up into what it is now. But it began really as a simple story about a little girl watching a barn owl and what happens then.
Do you think short stories can do something different from the work that novels do?
I think it's actually more. I'm not sure about that. I mean, as I said earlier, I actually prefer reading novels. I like to immerse myself in them, and get into the characters and sort of live the novel. And it's very difficult for a short story to do that. I think you just can't in that number of words do the same amount. But short stories can have a simple telling blow, if you like. Whereas a story, you can't have a simple telling blow. You've got to have something that goes on and has several things happening, but not quite so fierce as a short story, perhaps, if that's the word.
In these 28 stories, there's a wide range of characters. Did you enjoy the company of all those characters? Because surely you have to enjoy the company of someone in order to write about them.
I think that's true of novels. I think with short stories you don't get to know them well enough. But some of them, of course, are based on people that I've met. And I think I said somewhere, sitting at Oxford College table and listening to people. I'm a great listener, a note taker, and some of the things that people have said or things that people have told me have gone into stories.
So you've told us a little bit about how being a social worker and an Oxford academic has helped you be a writer. Has being a writer changed you as a person? Has it made you listen, for instance, in a different way?
I think well, the thing is with social work, particularly, and the particular social work training I did, which was, I spent a year at the University of Chicago, which was very psychoanalytic in its orientation. And although I don't accept that now, I was trained to listen very, very hard and to interpret very carefully and to write things down that people had said and to ponder where they came from. And I think that helps, that listening skill.
But do you listen, do you think, with a more acute or differently tuned ear now that you know what's involved in putting down those conversations on the printed page?
Yes, I think I have to try and catch. People talk so differently and have different ways of talking that I think I recognise, and you have to try and get those into words, which is quite hard. It's difficult to, yes. The other thing I do is living where I am in a retirement community. I do occasionally hear such funny things, and I think, oh, there's a story in that, there's a story in that. And I quickly write it in my notebook because my memory is still okay, but I like to catch the wording. And even at college, I mean, I remember someone coming and saying, I can do anything except hear properly. And I thought, that's wonderful, I'll write that down. And eventually I found a character in one of my novels who said that. People say wonderful things.
Can you tell us anything about the novel that's gestating at the moment?
The novel at the moment is... trouble is, it's got some good characters in it. It certainly has. And it's told from the point of view of a woman who doesn't have much of a life. It's a bit based on my mother. Doesn't have much of a life of her own, but lives through her children's successes and in fact her daughter. She's only got one daughter, and she's telling the story, and she's very much in the background. But you get. I like the sort of challenge of telling you about the mother without telling you about the mother, so you realise that she's not. That when the daughter comes home, it's her father she tells about her day at school, and the mother's making the meal, and it's always the father who's asked, Daddy, what happens when we die? All these questions are directed to the man, and this mother is terribly proud of this beautiful daughter. And so that's one character. Another character is somebody who lives nearby and is based a little bit on Harold Shipman. He's a medic, and he's fascinated by death and dying.
You do have a macabre streak,
I think
Barbara,
I think I do. Yes, I think I do. And somehow he's got. I've got a short. Originally, I wrote a short story about a medical student who wanted to know what it was like to die, and eventually he found the only way to do it was to commit suicide. Um, Having watched other people die, and it didn't answer all his questions. So, yes, I probably have got a macabre streak, but I try to be kind as well.
Well, the macabre and the kind are extravagantly on display in this wonderful collection. Do you remember the Barn Owl? 28 fantastic stories, out now in paperback, out in October as an ebook.
Thank you very much. Charles Foster, because we never named you, I don't think.
That's right. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.